Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If you haven't already done so, make sure to mute yourself so that there's no feedback for everyone else. If you have any questions, as always, during the presentation, make sure to type it in the chat pane, and we'll either cover it in line or we'll get to it at the end. Any questions are welcome, whether it's related to the presentation or not. So today, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things, but we're going to talk about things to write about online, ideas for social posts, things you can talk about in emails, and places to look for leads. In this case, with leads, I mean both leads for stories as well as potential sales leads. For those of you who were with us last week at office hours, we talked about all the different types and sources, places you can go for sources of content, whether it's the town, government website, or other newspapers in the area, or other groups or radio stations, the police department, etc. Today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, kind of building on that concept, and talk about like specific ideas. So to start out, we'll talk about things you can write about online. So the first idea is you can always do favorites, picks, or recommendations. So I jotted down a few examples here. Things like best hikes are great because you could do a series of articles on best hikes. You could do one for summer. You could do one for great night hikes, maybe great fall hikes, day hikes, overnight, winter, etc. And you've heard us talk about guides a lot in the past. So I'm going to take that a step further today. For those of you who don't know, guide is basically just a page on your website that has a specific theme or topic that you talk about and kind of give your recommendations. So I'm going to build on that today and say, if you were to do a series of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 best hike blog articles, you could then create a best hikes guide and link out to each one of those articles. It's just basically a summary page of blogs around a different theme. So it's a slightly different take than we've taken in the past about guides, but this is totally an acceptable way to do them as well. Building on that, you could do spots for a summer swim, and then you get into things that more have a more local business connotation, like favorite local restaurants, a spas guide, best takeout restaurants. I included this graphic here because this is just a simple search in Google that I said restaurants. Now Google knows that I'm from Folsom, so it returned, the carousel right at the top of the search results. I point this out because Google's a great tool for you to use to come up with content. They've already done all the hard work for you. They aggregated it all in one spot. So take it, put your own, individual or, special spin on it, but use that as a starting point so that you don't have to, I'm sure you already have 2 or 3 restaurants in mind if you're just thinking about it off the top of your head, but use this as a source to find, maybe some hidden gems that maybe even you don't know about. I'm going to pause here, and I want to try something that we haven't done in the past. I am going to ask everyone that's on the call to open up their chat pane and suggest a topic for favorites, picks, or recommendations, and I'll read them all back. And I'm not going to, move forward here until I get at least a couple people to chime in. So, Brian, who's sitting here in the room, maybe can give a couple examples, and I'll read them out as well. So I'll give you guys just a minute or so to come up with an idea and tap it in. Okay, great. So I see them rolling in. I see favorite rainy day activities for kids. That one was from Brian. Best place for a Sunday brunch from viewer 4. I'm not sure who you are, but thank you for contributing. Any others that come to mind before we move on? Thank you, Ashley. That was from Ashley at City View. I like that one. That would be a good fit for you guys, I think. All right. Well, please continue to think about it. We're going to play this exercise a few times as we go through the next few slides. And Brian is typing here. Think about problems people want to solve. What will somebody go to Google and type in? The reason we've said guides are so good is because they're not going to search for a specific restaurant, but they might search for something like best restaurants in Folsom, California, and then we have a better chance of ranking for those keywords that we're interested in. Another one, how to beat the heat. It was again, Brian's on a roll here, but it was 109 degrees here yesterday. So that, especially for those that have kids, it would be a great, article to do around this time of year. All right. So that's some good ones to start out. The next thing you could do is local news. Only Oswego does a really good job of covering this. Now, I want to be clear here, some of the affiliates we work with are, news first kind of sites, but the majority aren't. But that doesn't mean you can't cover news. And those that aren't, a full news type of site, I recommend you focusing on the real local, it's almost like an interest piece more than news. There's some kind of crossover there. Where the big outlets may not pick it up. You might get this idea from a website that you were browsing that it's not going to be on TV, it's not going to be on the radio, things that people haven't heard about. You can fill that gap. With different news. Like these two examples are really great. A Oswego boy earns 1,000 scholarship for Walk to Aid Africa. He probably got that from a local news site or a press release or any of those things, but it's really focused on local. It's a local person. People like to see themselves in news on websites. They're more likely to share things, and it's just another way that you can drive engagement and get people in your community doing the hard work of spreading the word about your site instead of you having to do it all yourself. A few more that kind of rolled in while I was talking from that last slide. Best local entertainment, best private schools, best homemade ice cream. Those are all great ones. The homemade ice cream one is a little bit different of a spin in terms of, I guess that's more of an editorial opinion, depending on, who's writing the article, but still a great topic to cover. So the next one I say is interviews and reviews. For the same reason I was just talking about, covering local people and places for news. People like to see themselves online, so you can interview an influential figure. Now, I don't know how many people know the guy, but I'm sure you find somebody that's high up in your local government, interview them, do a question and answer kind of article. You could review a local business. If someone has been in business for a long time, you can talk to them about what it's meant to them to be in business over the last 5 decades, or whatever the topic may be. And if you want something that's a little bit easier to grab or grasp, book reviews are great, especially if you're a big reader. The library probably does a lot of stuff like that. You may be able to have some sort of partnership there. We've talked in the past about reaching out to different groups. That might be an example where you reach out to the library and say, hey, we would like to have a column for you guys that is like a book or review a week. I know there's a couple of affiliates we work with that already kind of do, or they live in towns where the library already does something like that, and we're working with them to try to get that on the website. Last one is kind of educational human interest. It's kind of a catch-all here. These can be more generic, simple tips for affordable summer travel, how to plant a vegetable garden. I threw in a day in the life because I thought that was just an interesting piece that people would get interested about. It's kind of like an interview, but if you're very familiar with something, you could do a day in the life of a publisher, a day in the life of a gardener, a day in the life of whatever. Just interesting things that might catch people's attention. People always want to learn about how other people do things, so this is a great way to do that. Again, I'm going to pause here. This is a very big topic, and I gave you maybe only 3 or 4 examples there. There are lots of different things we can do. Perhaps you guys could now, let's play that same game and see how many ideas we can come up with together by typing in the chat pane. Don't be shy. Just off the top of my head, while people are still typing, you could do, how to prepare your home for sale. see how to paint your kid's room, how to make a decision on X. I'm trying to think like what Brian was mentioning earlier in the chat pane. What problems can you solve for people? Um, while people are typing there, I also mentioned that with this more general concept, there's an opportunity to syndicate content from other people. So we're big fans of the guys over at Family Features. As we've mentioned to some of you in the past, we're working with them to try to pull in their content into our system directly. But in the meantime, you can head over to their site. They give you articles that kind of fall into this category that you can, republish on your site with no, basically for free, with no recourse there. So it's a great resource to use if you are having trouble writing all of this content. So a few ideas that have come through: how to get your kids to eat when they're picky eaters. A day in the life of a teacher is a great one. How to make a small room look larger. That's awesome. How to balance your life. That goes down a whole nother path. You got health and wellness, how to get in shape, best recipes for eating healthy. All those kind of things are great ideas. So hopefully, as we wrap up this section on online content, I've at least given you a way to kind of start that process. Again, we always recommend putting together an editorial calendar just like you would in print. So I challenge you to sit down after this call, look through these slides. Again, we're going to post a video in our archive section. So if you need to go back and look at it again, you can do that. But think about what articles you want to cover in the next month. As we move on, we're going to talk about ideas for social media. We can do before and after, or any kind of comparison, really. So, I took a before and after shot from, a campaign we're putting together for us here at Locable. But, you could do local construction projects. You could do business services. So let's say you're working with a advertiser and they want to, as part of the package you're selling, you said, hey, we're going to do a bunch of social posts for you. This is part of the package of maybe an online series of advertorials and a banner ad, maybe even a social promotion. Let's say you're working with a landscaper. That's a great opportunity before and after. This is what it looked like before I got here. Now it looks awesome. This is what it looks like after I've done all my work. So you have a lot of opportunities there, paid or not paid. And then we had this one for Mansfield Magazine, which I'm sure Brian will want to chime in on, at least via chat. They basically said, which one did we choose? Below are the two options for our cover for the back-to-school issue. Which one would you have chosen, the Apple image or the full desk image? This one did really well. I think it had almost 1,200 reach, 40-plus comments. A couple people shared it. A bunch of people liked it. These are just simple things you can do. And in this case, you're teasing your upcoming issue, which is even better, and you're driving engagement in the process. So there's a lot of different things we can do there. Does anyone have any other ideas they'd like to share in terms of different things we could compare? This one might be a little bit harder to think of on the fly, but I'd like to give you the opportunity. I will move on, and if you have any, please just pop it into the chat pane. Some other ideas, some of these are a little bit more fun than others, but you could do a Throwback Thursday. It's kind of, I can't remember the word I'm looking for here. I can't recall it, but it's, like if you know what this is. Now, this is kind of a very generic example, but you could do, you could find things like this in your town. I've seen people do, a slight variation of this is they'll take a really focused picture of something in their community and say, like if you know where this is. Kind of a similar concept there. Always great, again, to cover people, but in particular athletes usually get people excited. So Steamboat Magazine did some great Olympic coverage, but it doesn't have to be Olympic, and it certainly doesn't have to be pro or whatever that we call Olympic athletes these days. The person on the left is actually one of my friends from Boston, who is part of the Movember project. And, he was basically running races. So you can highlight people that are, raising money for charity and doing it through athletics and other things like that. But really highlighting any people, is a great thing to do, especially if you're buying into the Main Street concept, which all of you are. I think this is Ashley again. We had a successful before and after for the first snowstorm photo last fall. Weather, that's a great one. before and after storms. I really like that one a lot. Of course, you can always, promote local businesses as events. I have several examples here, from the very specific to the not so specific. On the far right, Small Business Saturday has become this huge event every year, and now it's becoming, a monthly kind of thing. Always great to support that initiative. Um, Acadiana lifestyle. Actually, this is supposed to be on a different slide, so I'll skip that one. If anyone is looking for a mommy and me class, a program of 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, contact this person. Those are things. Obviously, you should have those in your have the actual events in your calendar, and it would be better to link out to that event for more details. But those are great local groups that, in this case, I'm not really familiar with Mommy and Me, but I imagine that's not a for-profit kind of business. If it is, then you can call me a liar. But uh, you can promote events whether they're profit or nonprofit. You should be doing this. You should be pointing people back to the calendar. You don't need to do it every day, but from time to time, highlighting really good events that people would be interested in is a great way to drive people back to your website. Um, Valentine's Day is coming soon. Think local first for all those special gifts. I think this one probably people get the hang of, so I'll move on. Local history is a fun one. If you go to Google, you can often find older images of your community. Just make sure you're using the ones that are licensed for sharing. You don't want to get into trouble of sharing an image that you don't have the rights to. These two specific ones are actually in Concord, New Hampshire, which is where I was born. And you could post a thing and do you recognize this place? Kind of similar to what I was talking about before with, zooming in on a place. That might be easily or not so easily identifiable, but people like to get involved. They like to guess. You can kind of do all different variations on that. And then there's some quotes and other fun stuff you can do. People love the pugs. So is it the weekend yet? Yeah. Okay. Everyone's going to relate to that one. You can do trivia, local Wednesday, trivial tip of the day. The Valley News uses 3 to 4 rolls of paper for each daily newspaper edition. Like you could probably get that stuff from your existing advertisers and give them a little extra props. In this case they're promoting Salt Hill Pub, which hosts a trivia night, so that's really cool. Holidays are always great. Questions to ask. Kids decided what they want to dress up for Halloween. Quotes are quotes. You can do what feels right for you guys. And of course, don't forget to promote yourself. You don't want to overly promote yourself, but say one of every 15 to 20 posts you make on Facebook, highlight yourself if it's a true promotion. If it's things like highlighting your next issue, that's less of a concern. Read the January 2014 issue. Hey, we're getting ready for this great event. We're doing swag bags, or tell us what your must-have items are. Coming back to the example about the snowstorm photo, a great post would be like, what if the storm's coming? Ask people what they're stocking up on. How are you preparing? Most likely they're going to be sitting in their house on their phone on Facebook, checking Facebook. So those types of things are great timing for inclement weather type of posts. Are there any other ideas that people have for social media? Before I move on to the next one, I'd love to hear them and share them with everyone. Brian says a little planning ahead can go a long way to take before pictures and then capture after later, local construction projects, etc. Again, we've talked about getting on your town's mailing lists. That is a great indicator of when construction is going to start. They will send out notifications when roads are closed. All that kind of stuff will give you a heads up that things are coming down the pipeline. Things you can talk about in emails is up next. We've really kind of hit on this a lot, but I didn't want to ignore it in this presentation because it fits in nicely. So I'll kind of go through the next couple slides fairly quickly. The first thing is obviously share your articles, events, and guides. You can do top articles from the month if you want to kind of curate your own articles a little bit, or you can do a feed like we've talked about in the past, what you missed last week. Editors' picks 3 to see. If you think about those, grouping of the blogs, like I talked about with the guides and the hikes, the different types of hikes you can do. You could do a email that is themed. So you could do, this whole email is about day hikes or about the best hikes in the area, and you can link out to each article that we talked about before. I say special event with details. This is probably something that would be part of a package you sell to someone who's trying to promote an event, but you could send specific emails that highlight some big local event that's happening, whether it's the town fair or something else going on in the area. You obviously want to send an email out every time you have a new issue, announce your new issue for, our print folks on the line. And of course you can cover news. So those are all fairly straightforward. Coupons, deals, and promotions, you certainly want to use your email list whenever you're running a social promotion, but you could also do it for, things like if you wanted to do a coupon section on your website, you could include a component that goes out, maybe once a month that has all the coupons that are currently running on your site, and that's an added benefit for your advertiser. In this case, especially with coupons, you really want to make sure your email list is set up and segmented so that you're not sending these coupons to people that don't want them, because that's going to lead to unsubscribes, which aren't good for anyone. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you're heading over to MailChimp, set up groups. Pretty much the way we set it up out of the box is we have one for, I want everything, and then you allow people to say, all right, I want announcements, I want coupons and deals and promotions, I want info on these topics, and allow people to really say, hey, this is what I'm interested in. That's good for you because you'll get less unsubscribes, but it's also great for your advertisers who want to reach a specific segment. At the beginning, you're probably going to send it out to more people. As you continue to grow your list, you'll get more and more specific of who you send each email to. So places to look, just a few more slides to wrap up today's call. We've talked about this a lot in the past. When I say leads, again, I mean both leads for ideas for stories to write, things to post to Facebook, but I also mean leads for sales. So the line gets blurred here on the next couple slides, but they're all relevant. Government sites and boards, you can get town reports. You got an economic development committee, especially for people that have live in a town where there's kind of a historic society of sorts, or a group that's trying to maintain the downtown area. They usually have some sort of economic development committee. Business filings are a great place to look for new businesses that are opening and closing. Great for content to post. Also great to follow up on the sales front. Parks and Rec, a lot of the town sites have their own directory, albeit it doesn't compare to the one that we're building, on your sites. And I've already talked about libraries. So there's some great opportunities there. Social media, we talked a lot last week about setting up your profiles and following businesses on Facebook or following businesses on Twitter or Pinterest or whatever. That is a great place to look every morning for content ideas, but it's also a great place to look for making business connections, especially LinkedIn, that we don't talk about probably as much as we should on the sales side. But you can search for companies by a town, and they will basically spit out a list of everyone there, and you can go through and follow them all. Great way to connect with businesses where you don't have a relationship. So there's a lot of things we can do there, both on the article or the content and the sales front. And there's a lot of other sites out there that don't really fall into those categories. Some may be competitors, some may be partners, some might just be local groups, but they're a great place to find information. So Yelp, just like I was talking about, Google would be a great place to look should you decide to build out some sort of restaurant or dining guide. You always want to check out your local newspapers, magazines, radio stations, TV stations, your local chamber of commerce. Brian talked a lot last week at office hours about how to use meetup groups to generate content. Reach out to the groups that are most interesting, that have some sort of local focus, and ask them if they're willing to do an interview. Coming back to the types of content we were talking about, MOPS groups, Kiwanis or Rotary clubs are great contacts to make. A lot of them run their own events. A lot of them do networking kind of stuff. So it works again on both sides of the table. So The last thing I will say is, in terms of leads, is don't forget to ask your existing advertisers for referrals. Um, word of mouth is still one of the most powerful ways to generate new business and new content ideas as an extension of that. So if you're in talking to somebody and you're talking to them about an article, ask them, what would you like to read about? What would interest you? Is there another business here that might be interested in doing something similar? Um, you know, it not only helps you with all the things we've been talking about, but it really shows that you care about what they're doing in the community. And that you're not just another advertiser. You're in there doing more. That you're kind of wearing more than one hat when you're having those conversations. You've got your sales hat on one side, you've got your editorial hat on the other, and only in the local ecosystem, you also have your "Hey, I'm a citizen here too. I live in town. I care about this place" hat. Um, We've talked about listing to leads, so as people do sign up for directories and events on your website, you should be making sure you're getting those notifications. Those are really great warm leads for you to reach out to, which is a kind of a version of a referral, so to speak. They've already kind of indicated interest, so it's on you to follow up and make that connection. So with that, just about right on time for the half hour today. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat pane. If you have other ideas that you would like to share with people, we'd love to hear that as well. And otherwise, we hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you again same time next week.